Rock on Rockies fans and Giants fans, welcome into a Locked On crossover here with the Locked On Rockies and the Locked On Giants podcast. I am Paul Holden, and you can find me at Paul Holden 33. I'm the host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, but I'm not alone today. I'm going to leave the floor open to the wonderful host of Locked On Giants, Ben here. Ben, how's it going?
Well, personally, I'm doing well. The Giants have won 5 in a row, including this dominant sweep over the Rockies. Apologies for the dominance of it. It was rude of the Giants to outscore the Rockies. What was it? 20 I don't have it. 24
A
to
million
8.
to one. It might as well have just been a million to like four.
Right.
It felt like that.
And then their last 2 against the Cardinals were the same way. So they've been playing well. So that it honestly it picks my mood up. So I've been doing well.
And unfortunately, us here in Rockies land are looking for are sprinting back to Coors Field. Very excited for this team to be back in a place where they know how to play good, consistent baseball, which is the friendly confines of Coors Field. After winning one game, very luckily, might I add, against 2 division rivals, and just getting absolutely shellacked by their opponents throughout both series, honestly. But the Giants especially seem to dominate the Rockies. They have now won, 10 straight games against the Colorado Rockies. And in baseball, especially when you're talking in your division, that can't happen. That's horrendous. And that is a massive boost for Giants fans and the Giants knowing, hey, down the stretch, we might be playing a team we know how to get our licks in and can lead to winning the division like last year.
Absolutely, and it was a big part of how the Giants were able to do it down the stretch last year. I think in September they came into Coors Field and swept twice. So I know we're going to talk about home versus road, but the Giants, I mean, winning 107 games, you're going to have a lot of success kind of no matter where you go. But yeah, I mean, it's gone in cycles with these two teams, so I kind of hate to say it, but it's also gone the other way. But right now, you see the Rockies on the scoreboard for me or on the schedule, and you think, okay, well, that's a series win at least, and maybe you sweep them. And that's honestly what I said coming into the series, and we saw what happened.
What is it about? What did you see in this series were the key differences between these two teams? A team that wants to go and retain that NL West crown. Most people probably still sleeping on the Giants, but a team that I'm not counting out until the end of the season because they've shown that they can be. It's an even year too. There's always that. You never know what might happen. What did you think were the main differences between the Rockies and the Giants in this series?
I mean, it started off in game 1 with Carlos Rodon on the mound. I don't see that type on the Rockies pitching staff. They've got some quality arms, but there's not that guy who's just going to go out there and strike out every batter. He's striking out almost half of, well, it's about 40% of all the batters he's faced this year, which leads Major League Baseball. So the Giants have that. They also have good starting pitchers throughout. The Rockies have some good starting pitchers as well. But I think offensively, the Rockies are a team that we often think of as a good offensive team, and a lot of it has to do with the ballpark, of course. And for me, I think that the Giants are a good offensive team despite playing in one of the more difficult ballparks to hit in. And they get the platoon advantage like almost every time. They've got a different lineup versus lefties and versus righties. Like when we saw Austin Gomber out there, we saw this righty heavy lineup and they were able to hit him up pretty well. And then we saw a couple of right-handed pitchers and they had a whole different lineup and they hit those guys pretty well too. So, I mean, it's not that the Rockies don't have some talent, but I do see a big difference between the two lineups. The Giants pretty much 1 through 9 are able to be a real threat and a threat for power and to work a count and to draw a walk. And like I said, you do all that, you create traffic, you have grinding at bats, and then you hit a big home run. It's tough to come back from that. And overall, how about just home runs in general? The Giants last year they hit 241 and they allowed like 150. So they out-homered their opponents by a lot. This year, I think going into yesterday, I didn't think to update it after yesterday when I believe the Giants hit at least one and I don't think they allowed one.
No,
But
The Rockies did not hit a home run on this entire road trip. They were held
wow.
without one
Wow.
for
Well,
this
that's a huge
entire road
one.
trip.
That's a huge one. So the ball has been the home runs are down, but still the Giants are maintaining that ratio where they had hit like 31 home runs and now I believe 32 because Crawford hit one. and they had allowed 17. So they're almost 2-1 out homering their opponents. And that's tough to beat. It's tough to beat, especially when you're also getting on base with grinding at bats and walks.
That's the huge thing. The Rockies, Matt, we're close in hits in a few of the games with the Giants. The Rockies got runners on, but the big difference we saw is it doesn't matter who's coming up for the Giants. You count on them to hit a double in the gap. I don't even feel like the Giants really needed the long ball to kill the Rockies in this series, because it was draw a walk, get a single, double in the gap, draw, or and the Giants really good at taking at bats, taking walks, and getting traffic. And the Rockies, especially on the road, just do not have the ability right now, which is crazy because this new look offense has shown at times this year that they had the ability to be more complete, hitting for doubles, not for power, and went into Detroit at least and scored some runs, but then have not done it in Philly, Arizona, and now San Francisco. And so you mentioned though, Rodon, that's the thing the Rockies do, and we're seeing, especially with the slow start to Marquez this year, the Rockies don't have someone that's going to strike out 12 in 6 innings. That's just simply not in the cards for what they have, and that is such an advantage. It's so impressive that I think 4 Rockies players, and most of them key offensive contributors in that game, had 3 strikeouts. I think there were 3 players with 3 strikeouts, and then another with 4, and then someone else with 2. So it was just unbelievable. You're not going to score. You can't score if you're striking out 12 times in 6 innings. So, man, it was on full display where it's just the Rockies might be able to surprise some people for the wild card, but this week was a reminder of how hard, how tough the NL West is. I mean, it's simply just a sign that the Giants are one of the most complete teams in baseball.
And they don't get a lot of attention for it. They didn't last year, and I get it. They lost some big players this year, including Chris Bryant, who we can talk about later. But yeah, they are. That's the thing, is their roster 1 through 26 and really 1 through 40. They use their 40. They've already used 42 players, and they're 19 and 12, and everybody contributes. And I think that teams within the division see that on any given game. It can be Mauricio Dubon, it can be Carlos Rodon, it can be Brandon Crawford, it could be Austin Slater, it could be anybody, Lamont Wade Jr. They have guys. I think of Connor Joe, because Connor Joe, I don't know if you know this, but he made his major league debut with the Giants, and he was a Rule 5 pick, and then the Giants traded for him, and in 2019 he made his debut with San Francisco, and it was the first season under their new-ish president of baseball operations, then new Farhan Zaidi. And so he targeted Joe because that's the thing. Joe gives you kind of the one type of at bat that I would say the Giants have throughout their lineup.
Right.
And like, he works counts, he gets on base. He did very well in this series. And the Giants basically have a roster of guys like that. And that it adds up, and it's not necessarily a superstar, right? Like, a lot of people around baseball might not know about Connor Joe and appreciate what he delivers each and every night at the plate, especially. But if you have a bunch of those guys, it's a tough lineup to face, even though you might not have that huge name in the middle.
Give me a lineup of Connor Joes. I would be ecstatic. I mean, he has the best approach of any Rocky at the plate. I love Connor Joe is a dream leadoff hitter. There, you don't want, and you mentioned exactly, because when I watch the Giants, it's like every single one of these at bat 2-2, 3-2, 2-1, foul off 4 balls when you already have 2 strikes. But that's on the flip side. We saw Connor Joe do that, against Rodon, against,
Exactly.
against Wood, all these pitchers that come up and just throw straight gas. And man, another thing that I didn't mention with that rotation, going from Rodon to the mix up of of Woods with his whole different approach to throwing the ball. What a 1-2 combo punch that is, and what a combo punch you can have for your gut and all sorts of good things for yourself if you take a drink of some athletic greens, just like we here at the Locked On podcast network do. What is this stuff? Why did I just hold up a vial of green liquid? Well, this is a great way to start your day. It's a great way to improve your gut health. And when you take a drink of this with the 1 scoop of the AG1, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens into your diets. It's lifestyle friendly, so if you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it works for you, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything. Still, while tasting good, and I'll prove it to you right here. Here you go. Bottoms up, delicious, sustainable. Athletic Greens is a climate neutral certified company. So many great things to love about Athletic Greens. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB network. And again, that is athleticgreens.com/MLB network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Ben, I have a question here for you from the live chat. Adrian Ortega asks, who do you think is really responsible for this crazy uprise of the Giants? Is it the coaching staff or a specific player?
I think it can all be traced back to what I was just saying with when they fired their old president of baseball operations, Bobby Evans, who was kind of the mastermind. Well, he was part of the group that the Giants of old, right? They weren't really the same way just going back a few years even. And then during that dynastic run that they had of winning the World Series, they were more of a kind of old school type of team that rewarded their veteran players, even if it didn't make the most sense and they were going to decline and all that. So then they fire him because the Giants had some rough seasons towards the end of the decade. And Farhan Zaidi, he was the general manager of the Dodgers. And so he was part of the group, part of the two at the top of building that Dodgers roster into what it has become. And so it's been a slowish, well, no, it wasn't even a slow process. And like I said, Connor Joe was one of the first guys they targeted. And he was from the Dodgers organization. That's
Right.
when he was selected in the Rule 5 draft. And so Zaidi was very familiar with him. So anyway, a lot of the roster moves are coming from, in my opinion, one of the best people who could be running this organization. And then Bruce Bochy is a similar kind of story. Like, he's more of an old school manager, obviously had a ton of success, Hall of Fame manager, no question about it for me. But then they do bring in a new coaching staff, an entirely new coaching staff. It wasn't just replacing the manager and that's it. Like, everybody pretty much, maybe they kept the third base coach a couple years ago, but he's since left. So it's a full turnover in the coaching staff, and specifically the hitting coaches and even the pitching coaches too, but untraditional. It's not just like Joe Schmo who played 20 years and just stick him in the dugout and tell him whatever he's going to tell him. It's more like biomechanics and using the latest technology to make sure that these guys are having the best possible swings and being able to drive the baseball. And philosophically, they've instilled in them the Connor Joe approach, which is don't swing if it's not in your zone. And even if you're maybe taking a strike that's on the edge of the plate, they don't want you to swing at it because you're not going to be able to drive that ball. And so it really is a group collective effort. Also, some of the new players that have come in, but even guys like Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt, they got better. It wasn't just changing the players. They had these players already. And Posey, he got better too last year. And that I credit to the hitting coaches. A lot of the pitching improvement, I credit to the pitching coaches. And it all started with that hiring of Farhan Zaidi in the 2018-19 offseason.
I mean, everybody on the Giants got better last year. I think every single person was setting some form of career best or season high or something like that. I remember going through, and that's a philosophy, and that's something I wish that's what's so frustrating. The Rockies are a team dying for this approach, for that mindset to go in instead of having analytics people come in and leave 6 months later and this and that. They got the Dick Momford boys and the Dick Momford gang over there. Bill Schmidt's honestly done a pretty fine job in terms of his moves as a GM so far. Senzatella might be one of the worrisome ones as we've seen this year. It depends on how this season goes for some of these people we've extended, but I am desperate for the Rockies to have an analytics-driven change in philosophy that isn't like, Coors Field is just such this big boogeyman where there's someone out there that's been crunching the numbers on Coors Field and doing the same stuff that we've seen throughout baseball for these teams, waiting for an opportunity, but just the Rockies not going after it. I think the Rockies are desperate for a philosophy change.
I agree, and I sympathize. I really do, because I felt the same way for a long time. Even though the Giants had all that success, I really felt like they were set up poorly moving forward, and that's kind of what we saw as the decade rolled on. And I think they would have continued to be in that spot. They had one of the highest payrolls in the game, one of the worst performing rosters in the game, and one of the worst farm systems in the game. And I feel like the Rockies aren't quite at that same place, but there's some similarities there. And I don't know. I was just ecstatic when they made the move that they made. And I think, yeah, Coors Field is a place that you should be able to have one of the best home field advantages in baseball. If
You
you have
should have the best home field
the,
advantage in
because it's the
baseball,
most
other than
extreme.
maybe Yankee Stadium or
Yeah.
these other like smaller, literal smaller parks. But instead of this mentality of, oh, big flies, I want everyone coming up to do what you said, spit on that pitch on the outside corner. And that's exactly why Connor Joe rules, because no one, you're not going to hit, especially with the shift, hitting an outside pitch and rolling over into three people on the right side of the infield isn't going to do anything. Take the pitch, and I'll be a little bit more better, feel better about a strikeout if you take a couple of hacks and foul a couple off and have a 7 pitch at bat instead of just getting blown away on 3 straight outside fastballs. The whole idea, I think Connor Joe should be the foundation of the new Rockies. I really, and it should be enhanced by a player like Chris Bryant. At the same time, I'm glad the Rockies have someone like Chris Bryant, even though he's only played, I think, like 12, 15 games this year so far after sleeping poorly, really messing up on his back.
Is that what happened?
That's all I know, is that he messed up his back sleeping. Him and Brendan Rodgers had issues on a bed either in Denver or in Detroit, and Bryant hasn't come back, which has been a huge deal. The Rockies would get a little more offensive. Chris Bryant was on the team, but I kind of wonder, instead of going big contract Chris Bryant, would it have made more sense for the Rockies to say go Schwarber Castellanos and get 2 players for the same price of Chris Bryant, and then kind of go, instead of we need a superstar, we need a big name player, take approaches of who can come in, and we have some home run hitters, but we need doubles. We need contact hitters. We need people to take advantage of that and play good defense. And I don't think that mindset truly exists for the Rockies, because they're I don't know. They want the CJ Crones. They want someone to come up and hit a ton of home runs and RBIs. It seems like right now, even though the Rockies would be a lot better with a lot more with the Giants' philosophy to the game than what they have now.
I think there's no doubt. And also the depth. I don't see that
Yes, that
necessarily
too.
with the Rockies. Like you might have a solid 9 or whatever, but then who's on the bench? Are you utilizing them in like favorable matchups like the Giants get? Like they pinch hit for their starting catcher in game 1, I believe it was. It was 5-2. Joey Bart, who struggled replacing Posey, they pinch hit for him with Jock Peterson is sitting on the bench because he's not starting against the lefty Gomber.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rockies didn't have a lefty up and ready for that move. And Peterson, it's not like he blew the game open, but he gave him a sac fly, tacked on a run, and they just like they've got Jock Peterson sitting on the bench. I think a lot of teams wouldn't. Well, I mean, Jock Peterson has mostly been a platoon player in his career, pretty much exclusively, but still, they have on any given night, like yesterday, they didn't start Austin Slater, who's killed lefties. They didn't start Wilmer Flores, who's killed lefties. They didn't start Darren Ruff, who's killed lefties. And so they're ready to come in whenever Bud Black makes a move to kind of target some of the lefties the Giants had in the lineup, like Jock Peterson and Mike Yastrzemski and Lamont Wade Jr. And so it's tough to manage against that. And they hit the most pinch hit home runs in the history of baseball last year. I think they had 19. And it's because they've got those types of guys just sitting on the bench ready to come in a big spot. And I don't think a lot of teams have that. And also, not just depth on the major league roster, but depth in the organization and 40-man roster.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
The depth is crucial. The depth is critical. It is. The Giants have an answer for every Rockies issue, or what they're going to throw at them. Maybe having a bigger issue with, say, maybe the Dodgers or some of these other teams. But when it comes to right now, and we've seen over 10 games now, and that's a large sample size, the Giants have figured out the Colorado Rockies, from the offense, from the defense to everything. The Rockies didn't do themselves any favor throwing the ball all over the yard like we've seen. This is coming this a Rockies team that leads the league in double plays and has elite defenders, but are certainly not playing like elite defenders. And I think that's a big thing too. Ben, we're going to wind things down with kind of the future of these two teams here. And I got one more comment here from our live audience, but make sure you are staying up to date with all the sports wagering action at BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions at BetOnline, where the game starts. Remember, live betting, folks. You can do stuff in the game, before the game, so many fun props and all sorts of great stuff that you can enjoy and get in on all the fun at BetOnline, the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Adrian also says in the live chat, my biggest takeaway was that even the Giants strikeouts are productive. They raise the count up severely every single time. Makes the Rockies look like a JV team. Yeah, we've talked about that kind of over here throughout the show, Ben. It just seems the approach, the mentality right now for the Giants is just such a, not only a benefit for them, but has clearly been a huge advantage when matching up against the Rockies. But I'm curious, with this team heading to Coors Field for the next time that these two match up, after I believe they're playing kind of in the middle of the week coming up here next week, right? Or something like after these weekend games
Yeah,
or
I think
something like
Monday,
that.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, they're the early week games. I'm curious, do you think we'll see any difference in the series here? Do you think, I mean, the Giants will have an answer for coming into Coors? They obviously have, coming off back-to-back sweeps at the end of the year in a crucial situation. What are your thoughts heading into the Giants heading to Colorado for the first time this year?
Well, it's no secret. I think whenever the Giants have a good team, they generally go into Coors and hit well, which is, it makes all the sense in the world. You put a good offense in Coors, they generally do well. There are exceptions, right? Didn't the Dodgers come in the first series of the year and struggle to
Yep.
score runs? So it doesn't always work out that way, but when the Giants have had a good team, they've generally gone in, and it's often like helps them get going, honestly, because it's such a friendly offensive environment. The pitching can always be tougher. The Rockies are a tough team to play at home no matter what. And getting the last at bat is always critical. So if it's a close game late, advantage Rockies kind of no matter who's in there, who your opponent is. But for me, I would expect the Giants are probably going to hit pretty well in that series, probably going to hit some homers in that series. And a lot of it might depend on who's pitching for the Giants. I would imagine are you going to see probably not Rodon again, because he pitched the first game in the Rockies series, and so he'll probably pitch in the St. Louis series they have coming up. But so that's good news for the Rockies, I think, because he's the type of guy, I think he can go in there. He's fastball mostly, and he could just blow you away. And the
Yeah, it's
altitude
hit
doesn't
this, and
really.
if you do, the defense will figure it out. And if I get burned on one solo shot, I don't care. I'm going to throw gas at you again, and I'm going to overpower you like he. I mean, and he didn't overpower. He didn't just overpower Rockies hitters. He overpowered the Rockies hitters, the Rockies core. Three through four, 3 through 6, 3 through 5. I mean, that you're absolutely right. He has the ability to go anywhere and just say, "I'm going to dominate you with the fastball."
Yeah, and to be fair, he's done that against everybody this year. He's done literally what he did against Colorado to every single time he's gone out. He's been that good. So it's a big deal to not have to face him, I would say, coming up. And it's just like you might face some of the guys who are not as much of strikeout pitchers, and I think that could help because you put balls in play in Coors, and as you know, it's a giant field, and so balls fall in, and then also the balls leave the park. So I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be more competitive.
Yeah, that's really what we can hope for at this point. Competitive. These are division games, and especially when you got division teams coming into course, this is where we know the Rockies have the advantage. They're a much better team at home than they're on the road. Whether it be Eric in the live chat saying the altitude advantage as a crutch that we might use sometimes, but it's more than the altitude at Coors Field. When you really break down the what should be the benefits for the Rockies, the altitude is the big national perspective, and that's kind of my final question for you, Ben. What's it going to take for the rest of the league to take notice of a really solid team in San Francisco yet again?
I think eventually, if they keep playing like they are now, you combine good performance in 2022 with a 107 win season in 2021. I think they're not far off from people starting to really appreciate what they're doing, especially because after the 107 win season, people didn't expect them to do so well again, which is kind of funny. But I mean, you do take away Buster Posey to retirement. Chris Bryant departs in free agency. Kevin Gausman goes to the Blue Jays, where he's been great. So I get it in some ways, but also you're talking about a team that won 107 games. You don't really fluke your way into that type of performance. But they're 19 and 20 now. If they're say or 19 and 12 now, and if big difference there.
Right.
If they're, I don't know, like 33 and 20, I just feel like people will start to pay more attention. And like in power rankings, not that this really means anything, but they have been up there towards the top. Although, I'm sure you've noticed as well, like the Mets, they get all this attention. Bunch of teams in the league, including the Giants, are like right on the Mets' heels. The Giants have a better run differential. So those teams, those New York teams, are always going to get more attention, which is fine. I think the Giants do just fine as kind of the underdog, but it'll be hard to disregard them if they start having another very good season over a pretty significant sample.
I think the Giants want the underdog. I think keep your eyes on the Dodgers all you want. Talk about the Dodgers, talk about the Mets, talk about the East Coast teams. We'll be fine over here. Continue to take down those teams. I think the Giants will flash on radars when the Dodgers and the Giants match up, because it's going to be, top of the division talks there, and we'll see what happens with the Padres, who I haven't really thought as much about, but they're off to, they're playing really great and getting some improved performance as well. NL West, without a doubt, the best division in baseball. I think I don't think it's even close at this point. When you look at every team being above 500, Arizona actually, Millard might actually be onto something over there with his Diamondbacks talk. I can't really say anything after the way the Rockies played. Open for a turnaround, Ben. But thank you so much, Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants joined us today. I'm Paul Holden 33. For the Locked On Rockies side. But Ben, for everyone here on the Rockies side, where can they find you and stay up to date with all things Giants throughout the season?
I'm pretty active on Twitter, and the handle is @Ben Kaspick. Last name is Kaspick. And for my listeners, where can they find you for all their Rockies content?
We're at LO Rockies, Paul Holden 33. If you want to talk to me, LO Rockies. If you want to follow the feed, you got to follow Ben if you want. This dude knows the numbers. And he puts me to shit. I can't dive too deep into the weeds because Ben will hit me with stats, and I'm like, yeah, those are stats, those are numbers, those exist. But Ben is a really, really really great follow for NL West content too, because he always keeps an eye on what's going on in the NL West. But you can make sure you're staying up to date with all things on the Locked On Podcast Network with the Locked On Now and the Locked On MLB podcast. Make those actually your third listen, because Locked On Rockies, Locked On Giants, got to do that for your first listen, second listen, flip flop, and then make those your third listen. And there's so many great podcasts available on the Locked On Podcast Network for you to check out. And there's so many great people in the live chat. Thank you to Adrian, Eric, and Nick for popping into the YouTube live chat. Subscribe to your favorite Locked On show on YouTube. It's a massive help for us, folks. So if you hit that subscribe button, it is a big deal for us here on the Locked On side. But for Ben Kaspick, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Podcast Network.